Good morning. I want to say thank you to A.J. Robinson for not only convening this event, but for the stewardship he has given to Atlanta for so many years. And to the Lewis family, thank you all so much for joining us in this moment of celebration. I had the privilege of meeting John Lewis long before I knew who he was. I was a college student at Spelman. He was a young congressman having won an election from city council. And I got to meet him. I knew the legend, I knew the story, but you don't know John Lewis until you know John Lewis. You see, this is a man who can stand in the midst of thousands screaming his name and feel so much like your best friend. He was a man who believed that there were no strangers in this world. They were just people you needed to learn to love. And he was a man whose legend never outshone his reality. John Lewis was my friend. He was a man who counseled me in times of hardship, who advised me in times of challenge, and who led me in times of struggle. There's a phrase from St. Augustine, cor inquietatum. It means the restless heart. And I've never known a person more suited to that language. Because, you know, the notion of a restless heart means that you're never satisfied with the world as it is, that you believe you are obliged to make it better. And every day of John Lewis's life was about making life better. He believed that the perfection that could be found in America was just a moment away, and if he found that moment, he would make life better for all. And he was someone who did not believe simply in one idea. He believed in ideals. He believed that it was necessary to put your life on the line for what you said needed to be true. But he also believed that he had to put his life on the line to protect those who did not know what the truth was. When I got to know John Lewis as an adult, it was when I became the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, and he and I found ourselves at an event together. I sat at a table with him, and Jared, I think, may have been there. We were at an event for Georgia Equality, and we were sitting there having a conversation. I leaned over to him, chatting for a moment, because I'm sitting at the table with John Lewis, and every couple of minutes someone was coming up to him to take a picture or ask a question. I don't think I've ever seen the man complete a meal because so many people wanted to talk to him, and he never hesitated. He talked to the servers and to the senators. He talked to the waiters and to the Washingtonians. He talked to everyone with the same grace and the same kindness. And I leaned over to him to ask him a question, and he wanted to know what was happening at the Capitol. And I said, Mr. Lewis, I just want to tell you two things. Number one, I live in your district, and you are my congressman. And he laughed. And I said, and number two, I don't want your job ever. I have no interest in Congress. And he laughed even harder, and he said, well, Stacey, you're one of the few people in Atlanta who doesn't want this job. And I said, but because I don't want it, I want you to know whenever I ask to be of help, I mean it. And in those moments, we built a friendship that led me to follow John Lewis across this country and around the state, because every time he reached out, he knew that the mission I had was the mission he taught us. And I say that because I know that so often we forget why we do this work. We forget that the titles don't mean as much as the work does, that we sometimes mistake position for power. John Lewis understood that his position didn't give him power. His power made his position. He understood that being in Congress was simply a platform that meant as much as being the leader of SNCC, being a city council member in Atlanta, that his position, ambassador, was about being a leader for America. And in March of 2020, I had the honor of speaking at the March on Selma, the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And the night before I was to give the speech, I called him. I called my congressman, my friend who was coming through another bout of chemotherapy, because he asked me to reach out, and I gave him a call. And his voice was a little weak. His voice was a little tremulous. But his spirit was strong, because in that moment, he understood that in 2020, the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge needed to be lifted up yet again, because he understood that that march had never really ended, that the march for freedom, the march for the right to vote, the march for justice had never truly ceased, because we are still fighting for access. We are still fighting for our voices. We are still fighting for a democracy that we have been promised for more than 240 years. And as I listened to him on that call, as he talked to me about what he wanted me to say, there wasn't a lot of advising. It was more just sharing, because he said he loved America. He loved who we are and who we could be. He loved the people of Brown AME. He loved Alabama as much as he loved Georgia. But he loved the promise of what we could become. And as we commemorate and celebrate, as we remind ourselves of who we have lost, we must hold on to what he left us. And that is a restless heart. A restless heart that believes that climate change is real and that it will affect the least of these harder than anyone, and so we must fight for climate action. He believed that poverty is a sin and that we should lift up, especially the youngest among us, and he would be celebrating the slashing of poverty and demanding that we do more. He would know that evicting people from their homes as the Delta variant sweeps this state and this nation is wrong, and we must do right by our people. He would tell us our restless hearts must demand action on the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, because that's what he lived for, that's what he died for, and that is what he is still praying for us up in heaven. I am here to celebrate my friend John Lewis, because if I am half the person he imagined we could be, then we are all better people for it. And so I ask you to join me in a moment of memory of not just a hero, but someone who is the best example of humanity we have been graced with in so many years. My friend, our congressman, and our dearly beloved brother, John Robert Lewis. Thank you.